Hey, this is Zach from W Freelancing. In today's episode, we are talking all about the big freelancer marketing mistake I see, which has to do with client acquisition and not, quote, knowing your numbers. So we'll start by talking about probably the biggest marketing mistake, which is expecting clients to be free. We're going to talk about what to do about this and how it affects your business. And then we'll go into, in the second half of the episode, knowing your numbers and what I mean by that and how it's a superpower. I don't think this episode sounds super duper sexy when you hear it, but here's the sexy way to put it. What you're about to learn is essentially a superpower for any freelancer who wants to get more clients. That sounds pretty sexy, right? So we'll dive in. This one's a solo episode. Originally, it came from a couple of videos, strung them together. I still don't know if you like these or if you'd rather me be doing interviews with other people or whatever. So shoot me an email, hello@wfreelancing.com. Tell me, do you like these? Do you like the other ones better? You have the power to inform the future of the DYF podcast. But until I hear one way or another, I'm going to keep doing these because they are easy. So hopefully you find it valuable. We'll talk about the mistakes and then we'll go from there. So let's dive in. The reason I wanted to talk about this, and the reason it's so important, I have been guilty of this. I think a lot of freelancers are guilty of this. And if you fundamentally approach your client getting efforts with the expectation that it should be free, what'll happen is you will probably miss a lot of really good opportunities because you'll think they didn't work when actually maybe they did. You'll waste a lot of time, which will end up costing you money because you're not getting paid for lead gen time, for example. And if you had been replacing that with client work, you would have been paid with it. And you'll just generally have a less strong business. So we have a different video where we talk about the 3 components of a freelance business. We'll link to it up here or there, or wherever you do the top links on YouTube. So you can dive deeper there. But for today, what I need you to know is that there are 3 big buckets of things in every business, including freelance businesses: leads, sales, and product. And so in the case of a freelance business, product is actually the service we fulfill. So leads is your ability to get potential clients coming in. Product or fulfillment or services is the thing you do for them. And then sales is the bridge. You got to sell your services to the leads in order for them to become clients. So lead, sales, services. When I talk about fulfillment, that is like the process of giving them the thing that they paid for, AKA you doing your work. But if you buy a course from DYF, for example, the process for me to fulfill your order, I don't do anything. It's just an automated thing because I already made the course. We have Zapier send it to you. So this video and pretty much anything else that would ever be about getting clients is going to be heavily leaning towards lead gen. So just to make sure we're on the same page, whenever you go on Upwork, that's lead gen. Whenever you go on LinkedIn and cold outreach to someone, that's lead gen. Whenever you reach out to someone you used to work with and ask them if they know anyone who needs your services, that's lead gen. Whenever you reach out to a past client and ask if they need any more work, that's technically kind of lead gen, kind of gray area. But point is, if you're trying to get someone to hire you to do a thing, that is lead gen. And so with all that in mind, pop quiz for you. If you send an email to a past colleague asking if they have any work available for you, so you just go into Gmail or whatever you use, you say, hey, Zach, nice working with you a year ago. I'm freelancing now. Do you have any gigs available? What did that cost you? That's the quiz. What did it cost you? Did you say $0? If so, I would respectfully say you are wrong. It did not cost you $0. It cost you your hourly freelance rate multiplied by how long it took you. So if you spent 15 minutes writing that message and your freelance rate is $50 an hour, then that email that you sent to a colleague actually cost you $12.50 to send. Now, before you stab me in the neck, let me explain why this is a valuable way to look at it. Because obviously you didn't have to pay $12.50 to send it, but the opportunity cost was $12.50. And the biggest objection I would typically hear for this is but Zach, my calendar's not full of paid work, so it wouldn't be like I could just swap that out with a client project. And that's true. But when it comes to lead gen in particular, you are doing the lead gen to ideally create client work to do and get paid for. You don't get to have this one without this one. And so every second that you're doing this one, eventually resulting in this one, means that you are paying for it. Because what the biggest freelance problem is, that I'm sure you've experienced, is the whole roller coaster of client work. You do this one a lot, then you get a lot of this one. And so you stop doing this one, but now this one's done. So you need to do this one again to get more of this one. I'm sure this is familiar to you. And so when that happens, you're essentially oscillating your focus between lead gen and fulfillment. If this one kept happening without you personally doing it while you were doing this one, it would mean you could just keep doing this one forever. And you could keep getting paid whatever this one pays you while this one gets done, and you pay whatever you got to pay to get this one done. And this model of no longer thinking of clients as for free is really, really, really non-negotiably important if you want to get to the point where you have passive lead generation. If there's one thing we hear all the time in DYF, it's, I want clients on autopilot. But the thing is, you do not get clients on autopilot for free. You don't get clients in general for free. And this belief system, if you can take it away, it's going to serve you so much. So I'm going to give some examples and some stories to help really solidify this. So if you're a freelancer, time is all you have. It is like your ultimate currency, more so than any other kind of business, because it's what you are paid for. And it's also often what you pay with. If you're doing lead gen yourself, you're paying with your time. That $12.50 for the email, it wasn't $12.50 out of your pocket, but it's $12.50 that you didn't get to earn from client work. And I think it can be tempting to say, well, I can do both. But the fact that you have the roller coaster means you can't, and I can't, and no one can, because at the end of the day, we have however many hours in the week. You can, for a short period of time, expand those hours, but you can't do it indefinitely. Like, you can only work 80-hour weeks for so long before you get burnt out. You can't do it anymore. That's just the way humans work. So your time isn't this flexible, unlimited resource. It's actually very constrained. And because of this, that's why it's so important that we get this belief system into our heads as freelancers that leads are not free, clients are not free, they always have to be paid for, and we're already paying for them. And every single one we ever got in the past, we paid for. Even the ones from referral we paid for, we might just have not paid very much. So where this matters, where it gets cool. Let's say you bill clients at $100 an hour, and you spend 2 hours a day prospecting. And let's suppose that prospecting process was fairly repeatable and something that you could actually kind of delegate. If you can hire someone for $20 an hour to do that work, or maybe do 80% of that work while you still handle 10% at the beginning, 10% at the end, then that essentially means every hour you spend doing that prospecting yourself, you're lighting $80 on fire. If you could pay someone $28 an hour to do something you're currently doing, when you could be just getting the leads and doing $100 an hour work, you're lighting $80 an hour on fire. An example that comes to mind for this is like Upwork Connects. I don't use Upwork myself, so I'm going to probably misquote numbers and costs and stuff, but Upwork Connects, as I understand, it's a way that you basically pay Upwork to make you more prominent relative to your competition when you are replying to a job post. Upwork Connects might cost, I think it's like a few bucks per post. I'd have to check. But if you could pay more for Upwork Connects to get a higher response rate to your initial outreach messages, you might think that you're shelling out this money for Upwork Connects and I don't want to pay for it because I can do it myself and it's for free. But if you actually track your metrics, which we have a different video for that'll be linked here, wherever they go, which is another big mistake, is not tracking your marketing metrics. If you track your metrics, you can simply look at the equation and say, is this money that I pay for Upwork Connects and its impact on the amount of responses I get, and thereby the time I spend closing a client, which again, that video, wherever I put it, lots of cool math there. Recommend you watch it. Is that a good investment? Is it a bad investment? If you don't track, you don't know. And if you think that every client should be for free, you're going to say it's a bad investment when actually it might be a great investment. These examples are obviously oversimplified. Life is complex. Business is complex. But if it wasn't clear, the thing I want you to leave with is this changed belief system. Clients should not be free. I'm not entitled to free clients. I'm already paying for my clients. I just pay with time instead of money. The thing I really want for you here is I want your eyes open to the way you're paying right now, because it's going to allow you to scale your business, raise your effective hourly rate, get more freedom, get more money in your pocket, grow your business. Did I say grow your business? I don't know. Grow your business twice. It's so important. And the story that comes to mind for me is like young Zach, 2009, 10, something like that, really early into my business. I ran some Google ads for like my small agency. I might have even been solo at the time. And I think I spent $500 on Google ads. And I think I was charging like $1,000 for a website or something, or maybe even 700. It was very early days, Zach. And I spent $500 to get a client. And at the time I was like, this is a bad deal. This doesn't work. That was my takeaway from the experiment. But as you'll already see, if you've watched that other video with the metrics and stuff, wherever it is, hopefully we link to it again. I don't know if we're going to do all these links, but find it. It's probably in the description. You'll see that a lot of the time, especially with Upwork, it might be that you're actually paying several $100s in client acquisition costs if you're doing everything yourself. So at the time, I thought that experiment didn't work because I earned so little profit over what I paid. But now, older business person Zach knows that most businesses expect to acquire clients with very, very little margin when they first become a client. Like in DYF, we're running Facebook ads, and I'm aiming to get customers at break even. Obviously, getting customers or clients at break even doesn't work as a freelancer because you're handling the fulfillment yourself. So if you get all your clients at break even, it means you cannot afford food until you eventually hopefully get a payoff long term. So you don't want to aim for break even clients. As a freelancer, you might aim for like break even micro engagements if you're running an agency, but that's like an advanced strategy. So we won't talk about it today. I'm seeing 13 minutes already on this video. But if I was comparing that $500 that I spent for my Google Ads client to the other strategies at my disposal, like if I were comparing that, I was doing Craigslist at the time to get clients. So if I were comparing that to all the time I spend on Craigslist or a team member might spend on Craigslist, suddenly I can do an actual fair comparison. And so the thing that I think is really useful to think about is asking, number one, what's my biggest constraint? Is it money or time? Would I rather spend money on things or spend time on things? Which do I have more of? Probably, if you're like most freelancers, your answer is neither. I have more of neither. But you have to pick one. So if you're saying you have more of neither, it means you actually have more of time because you can increase the buffer on your calendar. You cannot increase your bank account. Like you can't just magically say, okay, there's more money in there. I guess you can in the form of credit cards, but that's probably not the best idea. So if you're not sure what you have more of, you probably have more time. So if you're doing everything yourself, be asking yourself, if I had someone else do this, what would it cost? If I had somebody else do this, how much of it is repeatable and delegatable? And use this as your basis to determine what you're paying with your own opportunity cost, but also what you would pay if you delegated it. If you find that 80% of the process could realistically be delegated for, say, $20 an hour, what would it cost? Could somebody at $20 an hour do all this in 4 hours? If so, that means you could, in theory, get a client for 80-ish bucks. Pretty cool. So I'm going to stop. It's a long video. Hopefully it's been helpful. One thing I'll leave you with is that usually the biggest thing that's going to affect many of your metrics in the funnel of like, how many hours do I spend getting a reply? How many hours do I spend getting them to book a call? That kind of thing. Often the strength of your offer, so your service offering, the thing you do for people and the way you position it, that's probably the biggest lever you can pull to increase a lot of these metrics. And we have a free course about it called Charge What You're Worth. So I would recommend, regardless of what your stage you're at, if you haven't taken that yet, go check it out. It's at dyf.link/offer. Totally free, 9-day email course. Teach you all this stuff, and it'll set you up for success, regardless of which way you go next. Alrighty, so that concludes the first part, which is the expecting clients to be free part. And now we're going to dive into the other mistake, which is not knowing your numbers. This is one of the most powerful things that you can get as a freelancer, is knowing exactly how many emails you got to send to get a client, how many calls you got to go on, things like this. Like once you know this, suddenly you have total control over your client acquisition process rather than feeling like it's some nebulous, unknown, scary thing. So let's jump in. So why it matters. If you don't know your numbers, you are liable to write off certain marketing strategies because you think they don't work when actually maybe they do. You're likely to miss other opportunities. You're likely to not pursue things because they seem like they'd be too expensive or not work. And you're likely to just generally have no idea what's happening and what's working and what's not working, which will make you feel more anxious and like you don't have any control in your business. If your big goal is to be getting more clients in your business, this is one of the most important skills you can build, regardless of where they come from, whether you're getting clients from cold outreach, whether you're getting clients from Upwork, whether you're getting clients from your network, referrals, past business, more business, Fiverr. Fiverr's one, although Fiverr might not be as relevant here, but it is still relevant. Regardless of where you're getting clients from, and especially if there's some action you take to try to create more clients, and that's why I wasn't sure if Fiverr was relevant, this is imperative. We have a different video where we talk about the three components of a freelance business. I'll link to it above and the bottlenecks within each. Basically, the TLDR is that there are three components in any business. There is leads, there is sales, and there is fulfillment, aka product, aka your services. So in this video and anything else about lead gen, we're going to be focused on the leads part, which is getting people to sell stuff to. You have to have something to sell them, you have to be able to sell them, and you have to have people to sell things to. If you're missing any one of those three things, you do not have a business. Most freelancers are really good at the fulfillment part. You do your job, you do your services, that's it. They kind of suck at the sales part, they kind of suck at the lead gen part, and that's why most freelancers struggle. So just to be clear, whether you're doing networking, cold outreach, Upwork, Fiverr, LinkedIn, anything else, that's all lead gen, and that's what we're going to focus on. And I'm going to pull up this graphic that we have from the W-Rates toolkit, which is the basically the flow chart of the sales process for a freelancer or agency. So you can see basically we go from stranger to lead, to engaged lead, to sales call, to proposal, to client. These are all the stages. And knowing the what's called conversion rates between each of these stages is really, really, really important. And knowing how long you spend in each stage is also really important. And so when I say knowing your numbers, it comes down to those two things. It's knowing how many people that I've found that I can contact respond to me. How many of these people who respond to me can I get on the phone? How many of these people I get on the phone can I send a proposal to? How many of the people I send a proposal to buy from me? Those are the things that you need to know the transition points between in order to know how much you're actually spending in terms of dollars or time to get a client. And that's what we're going to dig into today. So to find out what that process looks like for you, I ask you this. This is an exercise. So I recommend you do it while we go. Ask yourself, how do I get clients right now? So if I said, yo, you need to go get a client ASAP, like by the end of the week, in the next 2 weeks or whatever, what would you do? What would be the thing you would do? And waiting around with your fingers crossed, hoping for a referral does not count as a thing that you can do. Would you go on Upwork? Would you go on LinkedIn? Would you get in touch with past clients? Would you go on, I don't know, wherever the hell else people go? What would you do? So that's the first question. And then I'm going to ask, what goes into that? What is your process there? So I'm going to use Upwork as today's example because I think a lot of freelancers are Upworkers. So it'll be easy for us to all look at, and it has a pretty delineatable sales funnel. But if you do cold outreach, it's even easier and better. If you do something like tapping into your network, it's a little bit harder, but you still should do this exercise. So for Upwork, the process in my mind is pretty much, I go on there, I look at jobs. I'll just share my Notion. There's gonna be ugly notes, but I'll share it. I go on there, I look at jobs, I respond to some, I book calls with the ones who reply, I make a proposal, I get hired. That's like the Upwork funnel, pretty much. It's a little bit different because sometimes on Upwork, we have people reach out to you, but remember, this is doing something you can control. You can't really control who decides to randomly get in touch with you. So we're focused on like actions you take. And what you need to do is keep track of the conversion rates of each and know how much time each one takes you. Because if you don't have that data, if you're missing even one of those two pieces of data, you won't really know what it's like costing you, whether it's costing you in terms of dollars or costing you in terms of time. And today I'm going to show you a couple examples of how having this data can be super empowering for you growing your business and earning more per hour and earning more in general. So in the other video that I'll try to link to above, we talk about the big freelancer marketing mistake of expecting clients to be free. And I'm going to basically build on that example today to show you the financial consequences of skipping something because you feel like, oh, I don't need to pay for it. We'll do it with Upwork Connects. The too long didn't watch of that video is that right now you are paying for every single lead you've ever gotten, every single client you have ever gotten. You're just probably paying with your time. But paying with your time carries an opportunity cost. So if you multiply your hourly rate by the amount of time it takes you, that's kind of what you paid in terms of opportunity cost of what you could have earned if you'd spent that time on fulfillment work, aka doing your job for somebody. So what I'm going to do here is kind of peel back the onion on that Upwork Connects example because I think it's a fun one. So imagine that you get all your clients in Upwork, and right now you do not pay for Upwork Connects. And the reason you don't pay for them is because you're cheap. You don't want to pay for Upwork Connects. You want it to be free, so you just do it yourself. You might be missing out on a big opportunity to be essentially earning more by having it take you much less time to earn a client, and here's how. So let's say you track. And by the way, for a good example of this, if you check out the 6 months to 6 figures podcast series I did with Brad, I had him straight up do this. Like I had him track his Upworking. He made a really cool spreadsheet. He got some really, really good insights from it. So that'd be worth checking out. So let's say you tracked your numbers and they look something like this. Note, these are not real numbers. I don't know if any of these are realistic. I basically created these numbers to make easy math. They're vaguely along the lines of what the real world might be, but I do not think you should use them as benchmarks or assumptions or anything. They're only here to illustrate like the process of tracking and the process of like seeing the financial consequences. They're not here for setting your expectations about Upwork reply rates. So that's my disclaimer. So let's say though that you go on here and you have like a saved search to find all the jobs within your niche, and you spend 3 minutes skimming every single one and you respond to 50%. So your conversion rate of like curating a job is essentially 50%. Of the ones that you respond to, let's say you have a template and you spend 15 minutes each, and you hear back from 1 in 4, so 25%. That means that for every 4 replies you send, you have 1 conversation with somebody. And let's say each conversation you have takes about 10 minutes. Of the conversations you have, you book a call with half. So 50% conversion rate from conversation to sales call. Let's say that your sales calls are on average 30 minutes, and about half of them seem like a good enough fit to send a proposal to. And then the proposal itself takes 45 minutes. I should have put that down here. Proposal itself takes 45 minutes, and about half the proposals you send get accepted. What we can do, if you had this data, is we can extrapolate it into something like this. We can see that 1 client means you have to send 2 proposals at 45 minutes each. In order to be able to send 2 proposals, you have to have 4 sales calls at a total of 30 minutes each. In order to have 4 sales calls, you need to have 8 conversations at 10 minutes each. In order to have 8 conversations, you need to send 32 initial messages at 15 minutes each. And in order to send 32 initial messages, you need to do 64, this is a lot of numbers and lines, 64 job post skimmings at 3 minutes each. Now, if we calculate what we're actually paying, supposing that you are a $50 an hour freelancer, and you should change this for whatever your rates are, this means proposal creation essentially, quote, cost you $75. Because if it takes you an hour and a half and your rate is $50, then that means that you spent essentially $75 of opportunity cost to do this. Those sales calls cost you $100. Chat combos cost you $67. Upwork replies that you sent cost you $400. Job curation costs you $160. So the amount of opportunity cost, assuming all my math is right, is $802. This is your CAC, aka client acquisition cost. In this case, it's not quite the regular definition of CAC, because the regular definition of CAC would be just in terms of dollars out. But as a freelancer who's DIYing, you're not yet paying somebody to do this, but you still have a CAC. If you think your CAC is 0, you are in big trouble, because it's not. And that's why the video that we'll hopefully link to up here, it's so important to watch. I do not want you thinking that your clients are free, because they're not. In this case, you're spending quite a lot of time to get a client. And if you wanted to replace yourself there, you would have to pay somebody else to do it. So that means it's not free. If you build your business model around the expectation that you get clients for free, you will not be able to scale safely, because you won't be able to afford to. Everything is based on the idea that you can get someone to do like 20 hours or how many hours of lead gen work this is for free, which obviously you can't. But imagine you were trying to scale and you had all of your margins based on the expectation that you would have to pay $800 cash to get a client. And even when you did that, and even when you paid for fulfillment, you could still be profitable. That is very exciting. That gives you a lot to work with, because then you can optimize this existing setup. So even though it might initially sound depressing, what's cool is what it unlocks. And side note, if you've been through the free Charge What You're Worth course or taken our Double Your Freelancing Rate course, you know that I'm a big fan of basically you positioning your services to your client about in the sense of the impact that they can have on that client's business. And a lot of that comes down to doing what we're about to do here for you, for them, showing how your services optimize their funnel, in other words. But that's tangential. If you haven't taken Charge What You're Worth yet, it's free. You can get it at dyf.link/offer. But back to it, even though it sounds depressing, it unlocks some cool things. So a good example is the very top of your funnel here, as it's known, is this job curation step. You have to look at all these posts and say, is this something that I should even reply to? But imagine that the process of making that decision isn't actually that complicated. Like imagine you could distill it to a checklist. It's like, do they talk about blank? Do they talk about blank? Do they say this thing? Does their post involve this? Like imagine that it was just a complicated checklist. If you could have an AI do that, or a VA do that, or a VA who uses AI do that, then you suddenly save yourself a lot of money by delegating it. So imagine that you delegated that process to a VA. It takes them the same amount of time as you, and you pay them $10 an hour. So let me break the math down. So if you spend 3 minutes to curate one post, and you need to curate 64 of them to get one client, what we do is we essentially divide 3 minutes by 60 minutes, which is 0.05 hours. 3 minutes, 0.05 hours. We multiply 0.05 by the amount we have to do, which is 64, and then we multiply that by the amount per hour. So if it's you, it's 50 an hour. If it's this $10 VA or $20 VA or whatever it is, you multiply it by what you have to pay this person. So for the $10 VA, we multiply 64 times 0.05 times 10 equals $128 effective savings. Another hypothetical example that I mentioned earlier is the Upwork Connects one. So the big disclaimer again, this isn't real numbers. I don't know how much Upwork Connects costs off the top of my head. I don't know what kind of impact Upwork Connects have. What I do know is that they should probably have some kind of impact, positive or negative. And I also know you will have no idea what that impact is until you try it, track it, and test it. That's like what everything is going to boil down to. You have to calculate the risk. You have to try the thing. You have to actually track it so that you can make an assessment. All too often, people make an assessment without actually tracking it, and they're basically just making an emotional decision with no data, which is generally not a smart idea. So let's talk about this hypothetical example again with the disclaimer that I don't really know what I'm talking about in terms of conversion rate boost or cost. Let's pretend, hypothetically, that for these 24 initial replies you send, you could pay $20 in Upwork Connects to get a boost on your reply rate to them. Because as I understand it, basically Connects allow you to get more featured in the results of replies from a client, which helps you get more replies. So let's say that you can pay $20 and your Upwork reply rate goes from 25% to 33%. So this conversion metric is the one of like basically messages I sent that became conversations. This is the part of the funnel that the Connects would affect. Suppose the Connects brought you from 25% to 33. That means instead of having to send 32 initial messages to get a client, you now only have to send 24. But what's really cool is that things like this ripple up to everything above them in the funnel. So not only do you only have to send 24 initial messages now, you also don't have to do all that curation. Instead of having to curate 64 job posts, you now only have to curate 48. So it reduces the cost of curation and the cost of the initial messages. What this looks like in terms of savings. So to get a client, you still have to send 2 proposals. You still have to have 4 total calls. You still have to have 8 chat conversations. But by going from 32 initial replies to 24 at 15 minutes each means that you go from $400 to $300 and save $100. And by going from 64 to 48 job skims at 3 minutes each, you go from $160 to $120, which is $40 saved. So your like gross savings there is $140. And then the price for the Connects was $20, which means you still come out $120 ahead. Again, I'm disclaiming, I don't know how Upwork Connects work. I don't know what the cost is. I don't know what the conversion boost is. So this is not me giving you advice to buy Upwork Connects. Do not take that away here. The advice is maybe try it. If you're going to try it, track it and see what the implication is. See how much time you actually save by doing this, and then make your decision about whether or not it works. And if you're using platforms that are not Upwork, like cold outreach, paid ads, whatever, the tracking is just as important or more important, but it's also a lot more intuitive. So you're probably already doing some form of tracking, I hope, if you're doing cold outreach. But if you're not, you should be. And you'll be tracking things like how many subject line sends of this subject line get how many replies, how much of this specific intro copy gets this many replies. And you'll use the different metrics at different parts of the funnel to know how well something's working. The big takeaway here is that as a freelancer, your time really is all you have. Time is a much more like close at hand resource for freelancers than typical businesses, because we get paid for our time and we often pay in our time. And in order to get paid well and build a strong business, you have to know what your time costs are for those big 3 categories. So remember, lead gen, sales, fulfillment. These are the 3 categories of business. You need to know how much time you pay for each for a typical client, because that's what your actual project cost is. So track this stuff. I'm working on a nice Notion tracking database for our lead gen course, The Blueprint, that I'll release in the next version. But for now, I recommend just something simple-ish in Google Sheets. If you check out the 6 months to six figures series with Brad on the podcast and on YouTube, you can see how he set his up. And I think I have a little bit about it in the W Rates Toolkit as well. As you track this, something you'll find, or something I've experienced anyway, is that usually the biggest thing you can do to improve conversions at each step and also improve your client quality and how much you earn is improving your offer strength. So in other words, the value or perceived value of what it is you do for clients. We have a free course called Charge What You're Worth that teaches you how to do this and create a valuable offer. So I'd recommend you go check that out. It's at dyf.link/offer. So hopefully you found this helpful. If you haven't yet taken the free Charge What You're Worth email course that we have, I would recommend you check that out, because that'll help you essentially hone the quality of your offer and your understanding of how your potential clients are thinking and why they buy from you, which will help you close more deals and get more clients. It layers really, really well with everything you just learned in this episode. Thanks for being here, and I'll see you in the next one.